Well, the New York Giants are currently sitting at the position they have been sitting at multiple times since 2016. Once again, one of the worst teams in the NFL. Like I said, this is not a new position for most Giants fans. We've been in this position so much to the point where it's like, once we start losing, we're used to it. The Giants have been one of the biggest disappointments in the NFL for the last couple years, along with the New York Jets. And if it honestly wasn't for the New York Jets, we'd probably be the biggest disappointments in all of New York. But somehow they take that crown. But it's not saying much because the New York Giants are just as bad, if not in some cases worse. For me personally, the huge and rapid decline of the New York Giants started in 2016. I'm not saying it was pretty before then, but in 2016, this is where it got like, oh, this is a dumpster fire bad. Like, this is terrible bad. And unfortunately, a lot of those decisions the Giants have made since 2016, unfortunately, in a way, still kind of affect us to this day. A mixture of bad coaching choices, a mixture of bad GM choices, and those GMs turn around and make some horrible free agent signings and draft some very questionable players that you look back on and say, why did we draft this player? Today we will look at every wrong decision that New York Giants have made since 2016. Before I get into the video though, I want to give a huge shout out to That's So Good Sports for the inspiration for this video. He's done videos like this for the New York Jets and also his team, the Denver Broncos. So if you want to watch his perspective on it for those two teams, feel free to. But this is my perspective on it for the New York Giants because I feel like it's needed. It's long overdue at this point. Anyways, if you're a Giants fan, make sure you grab a bucket, grab something. You're going to cringe, you're going to shake your head, you might even hurl a little. If you're a casual fan, get ready to laugh. But I wouldn't blame you, this team is a joke. But I'm doing a bunch of waffling, so let's go ahead and get into it. Wow, so the 2016 season for the New York Giants, that was a bit of a surprising season for their team. They started off 2-0, and then they would lose 3 straight, and then they went on to go on a 5-game winning streak, and eventually they ended the season 11-5, and they would end up going to the playoffs that year. This team really wasn't expected to have a lot of expectations this year. However, they had one of the best defenses in the league, and Eli Manning looked like, once again, the old Eli Manning from a couple years ago who won the Super Bowl. So when you look at that, how did the season go wrong for the New York Giants? And it all points back to one fatal mistake that would be the curse of this team for many more years, the infamous boat pick. Why is this boat pick so infamous though? This picture was taken right before the New York Giants playoff game against the Green Bay Packers and had 3 of our star receivers on it, that being Sterling Shepard, Victor Cruz, and of course, Odell Beckham Jr. Everybody cooked the New York Giants for this picture. It was a huge media disaster, and rightfully so. Why would you do this? Why are you even on a big, before even a playoff game in the first place? Like, there's so many questions to ask. But then the worst of it would come, of course, in the wild card game against the Green Bay Packers. A lot of people thought the New York Giants were going to come in here and win this game. I mean, they had one of the best offenses in the league, and once again, their offense was pretty functional. But pointing back to that boat pick, pay attention to the 3 receivers I'm going to talk about right now. Sterling Shepard, Odell Beckham, and Victor Cruz. Now, in Sterling Shepard's defense, he had 4 catches for 63 yards. That's not terrible. But then, Victor Cruz, the veteran of this team, 3 catches for 30 yards. Odell Beckham Jr., the star of this team, one of the best receivers in the league, 4 catches for 28 yards. In total, the New York Giants had 7 drops from their receivers in this game, and they would end up losing this game 38-10. In case it wasn't obvious, that boat picture and going on that boat in general is the worst decision the New York Giants made in 2016. There's not really any other bad decision. You could argue that hiring Ben McAdoo would be the worst decision here, but hindsight is 2020, and at the time, this is like a pretty good hire. But we'll get back into that in a couple more minutes, though. As a matter of fact, the boat pick is going to be the only one on this list that's not caused by the New York Giants management for the most part, because everything else on this list is caused by the New York Giants management directly, pretty much. You're going to find out in 2017, things only get worse from here. After the 2016 season for the New York Giants, a lot of people thought in 2017 the New York Giants would be contenders, and they had a pretty good draft in 2017 for the most part in my opinion. Evan Ingram, Dalvin Tomlinson, and Wayne Gallman were three players who were contributors at one point for the New York Giants. Oh wait, I'm going back way too far. Free agency wise, they didn't really get any key guys outside of Brandon Marshall and also Geno Smith. Jason Pierre-Paul is one, but he was re-signed, so not technically an acquisition. If you already had him, you just keeping him now. But as we all know, the 2017 season for the New York Giants was an absolute disaster. Right out of the gates, the New York Giants started off 0-5, so any contending chances were already doomed right then and there. If things were already bad enough, after they started 0-5, they found out that their star receiver Odell Beckham Jr. would be out for the rest of the season after he suffered a gruesome leg injury against the Chargers in Week 5. When it comes to a horrible season like this, where there's a number of bad things that have going on this season, what could possibly be the single worst decision the New York Giants made this season? If the New York Giants' decision to bench Eli Manning was quite easily the worst decision they made this year. Now, I think there's a double-sided argument here. I think Eli Manning honestly kinda deserved to be benched. And I'm not saying that because of Eli Manning, I'm saying because the Giants were pretty much in a lost season and Eli Manning wasn't exactly playing that well. So why keep putting him out there if the Giants are just gonna keep losing games and basically risking him getting hurt? And then there's the other argument. Geno Smith is a person they basically benched him for. And here's the thing, Geno Smith had no future with this team. He was going to be back with this team. He's a backup quarterback for a reason. And you also just drafted Davis Webb in the 2017 NFL draft. So why do you have a rookie quarterback that you don't intend on starting and you're instead putting that ball in the hands of a backup quarterback who once again has no future with this team? At least with Davis Webb, you can see what you have out of him. He might not be the future star of this team, he might not be the future quarterback of this team, but at least starting him makes more sense than starting a guy who, like I said, has no future with this team. But quite possibly the biggest one, most of all, that fans felt disrespected by was the fact that they ended Eli Manning's legendary giant streak of most starts by an NFL quarterback. Most ironic part about all this is Ben McAdoo did this in a one desperate attempt to save his job, but in the end, after the Raiders game, him and Jerry Reese ended up being fired altogether, and Eli Manning would be the starter once again for the Giants the game after this. While the decision to bench Eli Manning was definitely a questionable one, it would not take long for the Giants to make another terrible decision, as by week 17, they already had their new general manager, and it would be none other than former Carolina Panthers general manager, Dave Gettleman. We all know how the tenure with Dave Gettleman was for the New York Giants, and without spoiling the rest of this video, trust me and believe he is going to be on here multiple times in one segment. Dave Gettleman already had a very questionable tenure during his time with the Carolina Panthers, and the New York Giants hired him, and he would basically bring some problems to the New York Giants that we would find out later on would be some big problems. Oh, but don't worry, the next bad decision for the New York Giants would not take long to come, as the next bad decision would be the decision to hire Pat Shurmur as the new head coach of the Giants. Pat had a great year as the offensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings in 2017 when he led them to the NFC Championship game despite the fact he had Case Keenum as their starting quarterback. However, Shurmur was previously the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, where he went 4-12 and 5-11 respectively. We all know Shurmur in the end would not do anything for this team, as he basically essentially had the same records he had with the Cleveland Browns with the New York Giants. Hindsight is 2020 at this point, but the New York Giants didn't have a lot of better candidates in 2017. Like, I'm seeing Matt Patricia and Josh McDaniels as candidates, and let's be honest, those all would have been bigger disasters than hiring Pat Shurmur. And remember when I said Dave Gettleman was pretty much already bad enough at the Carolina Panthers, so why hire him here? Well, the 2018 free agency would basically prove my point, as that was a huge disaster when you look at it now. Big name he was signing free agency would be former Patriots offensive lineman Nate Soldier, who he signed to a 4-year, $62 million deal. And this ended up being a huge disaster. Nate Soldier was nothing short of a human turnstile and a traffic cone during his time with the New York Giants. He was bad in 2018, and if he was bad in 2018, what do you think he was in 2019? Horrifically bad. He would also sign Patrick O'Malley to a 3-year, $15 million deal, And once again, this was also bad. He actually started 6 games for the Giants in 2018. However, he suffered a knee injury and he would be released the same season for the Giants. How can this possibly get worse? He would also sign Kareem Martin to a 3-year, $21 million deal, and this was also bad because Kareem Martin was nothing more than a debt player for the New York Giants, who somehow got that big contract. Now, that might not seem big to some of you guys, but it's big in my opinion. Then he would sign Jonathan Stewart to a 2-year, $6.9 million deal. You're going to find out later on why that's a bad decision now. He also traded for former Rams linebacker Alec Ogletree in 2018, and Alec Ogletree was pretty much a very average linebacker who somehow the New York Giants decided to trade a 4th round pick and a 6th round pick for. The questionable decisions don't end there. The New York Giants would also decide to trade away Jason Pierre-Paul, longtime defensive end, to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and Jason Pierre-Paul was still a very solid pass rusher for the New York Giants, so it was very mind-boggling as to why the New York Giants decided to trade him. Not only would Jason Pierre-Paul continue to thrive in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but he also would end up winning the ring with the team in 2021. To finally top all his bad 2018 offseason moves up, let's look at the 2018 NFL Draft, where the New York Giants held the 2nd overall pick in that draft. It was pretty clear that Eli Manning's days for the New York Giants were numbered. Despite the fact he won 2 Super Bowls with the team, it was pretty clear that he was regressing and the New York Giants need to find their next face of the team. Going into the 2018 NFL Draft, let's already assume that Baker Mayfield was already going to be picked by the Cleveland Browns. That leaves you with some other options. Josh Allen, Sam Darnold, Lamar Jackson, and Josh Rosen as choice to take. Even guys such as Quentin Nelson and Bradley Chubb would be solid decisions for the Giants. But here's the thing, at least with a quarterback, you can have some time to rebuild with this team, and you know that gives you a slate to basically have some room for mistakes and have some room to basically build that quarterback up. Even if Josh Rosen was the buzz he is now, and Sam Darnold was the very average guy he is now, here's the thing, the New York Giants would have a chance to take a starting quarterback again in the later on drafts, but at least then you have, like I said, time to have mistakes with a rookie quarterback who's still in his rookie contract. The Giants would say no to all these options. In the 2018 NFL Draft, they would take Saquon Barkley with the 2nd overall pick. Saquon Barkley had an outstanding rookie year for the Giants where he ended up winning Offensive Rookie of the Year, and overall Saquon Barkley was a really good player for the Giants. However, this did not help the Giants whatsoever as they would continue to lose even with Saquon Barkley on the team every year outside of 2022. Meanwhile, Josh Allen went on to become a great quarterback for the Buffalo Bills. Sam Darnold kind of got held back by the New York Jets, and now he's having a great career with the Minnesota Vikings. Josh Rosen is obviously a bust, and Lamar Jackson is one of the best quarterbacks in the league and a 2-time MVP. Meanwhile, Saquon Barkley is no longer on this team. Mind you, everything I just mentioned was only in 2018, so imagine how bad 2019 is going to be for the New York Giants, and boy oh boy, this was an absolute disaster. But let's go ahead and get the big one out of the way, and that's the New York Giants' decision to trade Odell Beckham Jr. to the Cleveland Browns. And I know what you guys are going to say, we got Dexter Lawrence out of this trade, but let me explain why I have Odell Beckham Jr. on this list. The New York Giants previously gave him a contract extension prior to this season, and they traded him away after getting that extension. What makes this all the more worse is that Dad Gettleman said previously that he did not sign Odell Beckham Jr. to trade him, and he did exactly that. Again, I'm not saying the decision to trade Odell Beckham Jr. was bad. I'm saying that the fact that he extended him prior to this and then traded him was the bad decision here. Clearly the Giants won this trade when they got Dexter Lawrence, but everything he did before that is why this decision is on this list right now. But man oh man, Odell Beckham Jr. was one of the best receivers in the league before the Giants traded him away. So how can you replace Odell Beckham Jr.? Pretty easily. You sign a 30-year-old Golden Tate to a 3-year, $37.5 million deal worth $23 million guaranteed. This immediately started off bad for the New York Giants in 2019 as Golden Tate was suspended 4 games for violating the NFL's policy on PEDs. Overall though, Golden Tate's production did not match his contract as he caught 84 passes for 1,000 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2 seasons. He was by far Daniel Jones' best option outside of Darius Slayton. This isn't saying much because the bar is very low. As I told you before, if you thought 2018 was bad, 2019 would not get a lot better. And I'm going to save the worst decision the Giants have possibly made over the last couple seasons for last. So I'm basically going to skip a little bit before I get to that one. The New York Giants had already made 2 picks in the 2019 NFL Draft, but the New York Giants said, we aren't done. They would jump back into the first round, trading up with the Seattle Seahawks, and they would take none other than Georgia defensive back DeAndre Baker with a 30th overall pick. Very cheap plug real quick, I actually did a video on DeAndre Baker earlier, so if you want to go check that out, feel free to. Baker played just 1 season with the New York Giants in 2019, before he got cut in 2020 after being rolled up into a false armed robbery case. But even before this, a lot of scouts are worried about DeAndre Baker pre-draft wise, as a lot of people question his work ethic, and they would see that pretty much full on in 2019. Baker was very bad in 2019, he was apparently sleeping in meetings, and even his teammates are apparently ripping him apart. What makes this all the more embarrassing is the fact that DeAndre Baker admittedly said he didn't know the playbook. So that pretty much sums up how bad this pick is. I promise you I'm not done with the 2019 NFL Draft. We're going to get back to that, but I do want to get this one out of the way because I don't have to talk long about this one. But the next questionable decision the Giants would make in 2019 was trading for Leonard Williams from the New York Jets. Now Leonard Williams wasn't a bad player, but the Giants were once again a rebuilding team and they had no business being buyers at the trade deadline, but that's exactly what they would do. Leonard Williams had a good career with the New York Giants, and I mean just good. Not great, just good in my opinion. You would end up getting extended a while later, getting a $63 million deal worth $45 million guaranteed, making him one of the highest paid defensive tackles in the league. And again, Leonard Williams was not bad with the Giants, but he wasn't great either. But once again, this is one of those situations where his contract did not match his production. This will probably be the first move I won't drag Dave Gettleman too much for, because Leonard Williams wasn't a bad player. Unlike a lot of other guys on this list, he just wasn't a great player, but that's not a problem though. One that I almost forgot about, but I'm glad somebody reminded me of, is the fact that they didn't trade Landon Collins in 2019 and instead let him walk, and he ended up signing a big contract with the Washington Redskins. Landon Collins has gone on to say that he would have not mind staying with the New York Giants, but Dave Gettleman ripped that, and he wouldn't be the first defensive back to rip Dave Gettleman. Josh Norman also did. The New York Giants truly were not going to extend Landon Collins. Why not trade him away in 2018 and get back compensation for it? Landon Collins was still by far one of the best defensive backs in the league, and they could have got some good compensation out of it. Instead, they let him walk and they got absolutely nothing. Now, Landon Collins actually wanted to return back to the Giants for the 2019 season. Thing is, Dave Gettleman didn't want him to return back, and I don't know what it is with the New York Giants. They did the same thing with McKinney, and they also did the same thing with Landon Collins. Do y'all have something to get excited that we don't know about? But don't worry, I have saved the best one for last, the worst one for last, at least in this segment. In 2019, I talked about DeAndre Baker and how bad he was. But there was one more guy the Giants took 6th overall in 2019, and that was none other than Duke quarterback Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones' career with the New York Giants can be described as nothing short of how did this guy even play 6 seasons in the first place. In 2019, as a rookie, he wasn't bad, he just wasn't great either. In 2020 and 2021, he was at best an average quarterback, and to be quite honest, he should have lost his job after 2021. He's just very lucky that the 2021 quarterback class was absolutely awful. In 2022, just like his rookie year, he wasn't bad, but in my opinion, he wasn't great either, outside of that playoff game against the Minnesota Vikings. In 2023 and now 2024, he's back to where he once was, at best an average quarterback. But we're gonna pause right there, because we all know I'm gonna have to come back to this. But in 2020, let's breathe a sigh of relief, because it wasn't bad, but it wasn't necessarily great either. 2020 was just filled with bad coaching choices for the Giants. Let's start with the most obvious one, the decision to hire Joe Judge. We all know how much of a disaster that was. He gave us hope in 2020, and then in 2021, he took all that hope and just put it down the drain pretty quickly. He got exposed for being a tough guy who had no balls whatsoever, and overall, he was just a terrible head coach. Along with that, he brought in a terrible offensive coordinator with him in Jason Garrett, known as the Clapper, who made this offense look even worse than it already was. What's the other bad decision? The New York Giants had already fired Pat Shurmur after the 2019 season, but somehow Dave Gettleman managed to keep his job, and that's a problem here because he should have been fired along with Pat Shurmur. Now, for the first time, Dave Gettleman is going to get the benefit of the doubt for me. In 2020, he drafted Andrew Thomas and Xavier McKinney, who were both good or great players for the Giants. The only sort of flaw I could probably say is you should have drafted Tristan Wirfs, but Andrew Thomas is an all-pro player, so, it still kind of works out. Injuries have only been his really downside at this point. 2020 wasn't horrible, but 2021 would be where it starts back. It started off in 2021, the New York Giants gave Leonard Williams that 3-year, $63 million deal that I talked about earlier. And again, Leonard Williams wasn't a bad player, he just wasn't a great player, and this kind of felt like an overpay, which in hindsight it kind of was. We all know the big disaster they had in 2021 when they gave Kenny Golladay that 4-year, $72 million deal, and Kenny Golladay had a total of 1 touchdown for the New York Giants that came in week 18 of the 2022 NFL season. By far one of the worst contracts in Giants history, and honestly, probably in NFL history. To add on to that, their 2021 NFL draft, when you look at it now, was absolutely terrible. First off, they traded down and took Kadarius Toney with the 20th overall pick. And let's be honest, Kadarius Toney's drama with the New York Giants pretty much overshadowed anything else he did, because he really didn't do anything else with the Giants. He didn't even have a single touchdown with the team. However, if the New York Giants stayed put and did not trade down with the Bears, they could have had Rashawn Slater, who's a pretty good tackle, and they could have also had Micah Parsons, who is one of the best defensive players in the league. And let's look at where he's at now. Oh wait, the rival, the Dallas Cowboys. And the New York Giants' other draft choices were also not a lot better. Azeez Ojulari was actually pretty good in his rookie year, but unfortunately health has always been an issue with him. Aaron Robinson, Ellis Smith, Gary Brightwell, and Rodarius Williams aren't even on the team anymore. But finally, John Mara made a gutsy decision in 2022, or at the start of 2022. John Mara at first said Joe Judge is going to be back. Dave Gettleman was going to be going regardless, so it really didn't matter. However, after the fan outrage, John Mara grew some balls. He fired Joe Judge, and that means the New York Giants are going to go into 2022 with a full new slate. So now we keep pedaling into 2022 for the Giants, and the Giants were pretty much expecting to be rebuilding. They weren't expected to do much, they weren't expected to compete. They didn't have a lot of cap space, but they did have draft capital, so as expected, they didn't do much in free agency this year. Outside of a few key guys like Tyrod Taylor, Richie James, and Mark Lewinsky, as I said, this free agency was nothing to write home about for the New York Giants. Really, the only question moves the Giants made this year was letting Jabril Peppers walk and unfortunately cutting James Bradberry. Now, James Bradberry has kind of regressed during his time with the Philadelphia Eagles, but Jabril Peppers is one of the best safeties in the league somehow still. So those moves will always be questionable for the New York Giants and will have you wondering a few things. Why? But in the end, like I said before, the Giants didn't have a lot of cap space, so they didn't have really a choice here, which is why I won't drag the Giants for those moves. Draft-wise, though, there are some things we could possibly discuss that were very questionable. They took Kayvon Thibodeau with the 5th overall pick, and then they took Evan Neal. Those guys were all consensus, top 50 picks, top 5 guys in some cases. So I know a lot of people don't like those picks now, but at the time, those were right choices. So I'm not going to say those were bad decisions, at least right now. Taking Wan'Dale Robinson over George Pickens, though, was a very questionable move in my opinion. Wan'Dale Robinson was always undersized for a receiver, and even though he's pretty good for the New York Giants now, it makes you wonder if we had George Pickens, would their team's offense be a lot better or somewhat more functionable? It makes you wonder. The New York Giants in 2022 were not expected to do much, but they finished the season 9-7-1, made the playoffs, beat the Vikings, and then got hammered by the Eagles. Despite that, this was still deemed a successful season for the Giants, and many people thought next year the Giants could be contenders. However, in 2023, things would kind of go back to reality for the Giants. Unfortunately, this is where the downfall of the New York Giants once again resumed. The Giants in 2023 really did do a lot in free agency. They signed Bobby Okereke, which ended up being a solid deal, and they also signed Raheem known as Roches, who was known for being a really solid run defender during his time with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's some drama around Saquon Barkley for the most part with his contract and he ended up getting extended. But then we all know where the big mistake for the New York Giants came in. They would give Daniel Jones a 4-year, $160 million deal with the team. This at the time made Daniel Jones a top 10 highest paid quarterback. And I've said this before, I'll say it again. In 2021, Daniel Jones was at best a okay quarterback. I didn't see it as great even, and it definitely wasn't top 10 status, but somehow he got paid as such. And we have seen the fallout for that contract. 2023, Daniel Jones is bad. 2024, he's better, but that's not really saying much because he's still not good either. The only plus side from this is the fact that the New York Giants can get out of this contract in 2025. Outside of that though, his contract overall is still very bad. So far in the 2023 draft, no guy from this draft class has made a significant impact on this team, and hopefully that changes soon. So what bad moves did the Giants make in 2024? Well, I won't say Saquon leaving was a bad deal because honestly, the Giants need to do that. The Giants need to rebuild and they need to rebuild without Saquon Barkley. Yes, it hurts to see this man still booming in Philadelphia, but if the Giants ever want to move forward and they ever want to rebuild this offense, they need to do it without him. Personally, I would argue letting Xavier McKinney walk was a worse move than letting Saquon walk because he is playing like one of the best safeties in the league right now, and none of our safeties have really played up to his performance, not even close. Trust me, I like Tyler Nubin, but he ain't no Xavier McKinney, and Jason Pennick, yeah, he is who he is, honestly. And trading for Darren Waller, who ended up retiring this offseason, was also a bad move. I forgot to mention that, but yeah, that was a bad move, I forgot to mention. And as of right now, the 2024 NFL Draft, it looks pretty good. A lot of the players are producing pretty well. Malik Neighbors, Tyler Nubin, Andrew Phillips, Theo Johnson, Tyrone Tracy, they're doing good right now. Let's honestly hope it stays that way. And oh boy, I think we're finished. Are we finished? Do I need to talk about 2025 early? No, we're not going to. I'm done. So based off the 2024 offseason, what do the Giants need to do in 2025? Well, the future of Brian Daboll and Joe Shane right now is quite possibly unknown because we don't know what the Giants are going to do because we all know they can switch up at any moment. What I do know is in 2025, they need to go out and finally find another quarterback because the Daniel Jones era is officially over, whether people like it or not. And while the offensive line is definitely improved, they need to make some improvements on that end too for the most part. I hate to say this, but if you're the Giants right now, just tank, get a guy like Cam Ward, get a guy like Shedeur Sanders, get your young quarterback, and restart this whole cycle. People are going to hate that, I know, but honestly at this point, it's probably the best move. As you can see, it's been almost 9 years of the New York Giants making terrible moves and disappointing this fan base. I went all the way back to 2016, and you all saw the bad decisions all that were in this video, almost 30 minutes worth of it. And that is where I wrap up every bad decision the New York Giants have made since 2016, and it was a long one. I hope you guys watched this entire video, and if you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to my channel and set the bell icon for future football content, and follow me on my social medias down below in the description, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.